Welcome back to part 3 of our interview with Jim Brown, where he tells us how to ask prospects the right questions, in addition to the power of silence in sales. Don't go anywhere. Part 3 is up next.
Welcome to this edition of Peak Performance Podcast
with your host, Thor Conklin.
Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Thor Conklin here. We give you the tricks, the tips, the tools, the strategy, the technology, and the psychology peak performers use in order to get more done and execute at the highest level. If you know what to do but struggle with getting it all done, or simply want to raise your game to the next level, this podcast is for you. Sit back and enjoy. You know, so often, Jim, sales professionals, they're having a bad month, a bad quarter, a bad week. And, you know, you got to just keep going on it. And some people come up with the tool of, hey, you know, more no's that I get, I'm getting closer to my yes. Give us some tools to keep the team motivated and moving forward.
Well, I am a fan of that. You know, the more no's you get, the closer you're getting to your yes. Because here's the thing. I think too many people, there was a book, I don't remember, it was written, 20 years ago, called Getting to Yes. Probably the worst book on negotiation I've ever read in my life, because getting to yes, getting those micro commitments all along the way, everybody thinks they're good. If you get the prospect saying yes, 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 well, they've already said yes 100 times, they're going to say yes at the end. And it doesn't work. They say yes all along because you're asking them, rhetorical questions. Of course, they're going to say yes to it. And so then you get to the end, and the first time you hear no in a conversation is at the end when they say, no, I don't want your product. And it's a hard thing to do at that point. So one of the things that I want to do, and I'm going to give some tools and techniques here, but I want to get to no as quick as humanly possible. But I mean that in the sense of a sales conversation. Once I've heard no the first time, now I'm actually in a sales conversation. Because when you hear no the right way, you can get to say something like, okay, I understand you're telling me no, but help me out. What does that mean? What would you rather see? How would this actually work in your world? And now you get context behind that no, right? So you need to be a challenger in that circumstance. So you're at the end of the month, you're not hitting your numbers. The problem is not that day. The problem has started literally 30 days ago. And it's the idea of a sales slump is it starts by what you're doing every single day, not at the end. And so when we talked about the 4-step process earlier and the activities you need to do every single day, that's the motivation you have to have. You have to have belief in your system that if I do these things every single day, I'm going to end up where I need to be. But I will tell you, poor sales managers, they're the ones who will come in and just say, hey, what are you going to close this month? What are you going to, how are you going to get that closed? We need more. We need more. Like, that's just a wrong problem. You're focusing on the wrong end. I can't control when or if someone closes a deal. What I can control is the daily behaviors that I put into my prospecting process, my discovery call process, my outreach, and all those types of things. So we do have to just focus in on that specific day.
And then overcoming objections are so important. What are some of the techniques that you use there?
Well, this is interesting. I believe strongly that every objection that you're going to get in a sales process, a lot of people think that you don't get them until the end. Well, if that's the case, I don't think you did your job. A buyer knows every single objection they're going to give you: price, budget, timeline, decision makers, features. They know every objection they're going to give you before you start the first sales call with them. Most sellers just don't have the courage to ask those questions. So I like to get them out right up front. I want to understand. So I might set an upfront agreement that says something like, hey, we get to the end of today's conversation. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to send you a contract. You're going to sign it, and we're going to begin implementation on Tuesday. Is that where we are? Right? If they say yes, awesome. I now know where we are. We have mutual agreement to what our next step is. But if they say, no, that's not what I'm willing to decide today, I could say, okay, no problem, but help me out. What were you hoping to decide today, or what was the outcome that you were expecting to have happen? Well, Jim, I've got to take this back to the board. I've got to get approval. I've got to get funding. Okay, help me out. When you say you got to take this back to the board, who on the board is helping you make this decision? Should they be brought into the conversation? When you say you have to go get this project funded, is that what the last time you guys bought something, what did that decision-making criteria look like? How did you get that project funded? And all of a sudden, they're starting to lay out for you all the stuff that you need to know in order to go close your deal. But typically, you're just afraid to ask.
Now, interesting. Now, I know on some fronts, you say don't ask for the order. That sounds a little controversial to me. Explain that.
Yeah, I absolutely say I'm not saying don't ask for the order at all, right? I want to get the customer to reveal that the only solution to their problem happens to be you. And so one of the other things I say is the greatest presentation that you'll ever give is the one your prospect never sees. And so that's where I'm saying you don't need a PowerPoint deck, you don't need a demo, you don't need this. By you figuring out how to ask the right questions of your prospect, you lead them down a path to explain to you where they are today, to explain to you where they want to be in 12 months, and to explain to you what happens if they don't get there. When they do that for you, all of a sudden you get to paint a picture that says, well, gosh, the last time I had someone tell me problem A, B, and C, here's what we did for them, but I don't know if that would work for you, right? And all of a sudden they are getting the idea that this is their solution. They're the ones who created it, just that you're the one that happened to pull it out of them. And so they get to the end and say, hey, I think this is good. I think this is, I want to buy this. And I'm going to be skeptical. Like, I'm not sure. Like typically when I've gotten here in the past, people have just signed a contract and started getting going. But I don't know if that's where we are today. And they're like, no, that's exactly where I was like, well, if you insist, I'll give you the contract. We'll get going. But, so it's I know it may sound like I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth a little bit, but there's just some nuance there that allows them to lead to where we're going. Again, they are the ones deciding at the end that it's something they want to proceed with.
No, that's very fair. I just brought on a new corporate client this week, and we had an hour-and-a-half meeting in which I probably spoke for a total of 6 minutes total. And I don't know if there was actually very many comments whatsoever. My 6 minutes were maybe 10 questions, and then I just shut up and I just listened. And then I recapped it at the end for about 30 seconds. And that was it. And he goes, when do we start? So,
yeah.
Let the client or the prospect give you the opportunity to tell you what they need and what they want.
And get out of their way.
Yes, absolutely. We always say, salespeople sometimes don't talk enough or they talk too much.
Well, I would always say salespeople talk way too much.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
In one mouth for a reason. Use it accordingly. I want to tell you a quick story on silence and the power of it. The largest deal that I ever did, I sold a deal to Sears back when they were actually doing well and they had money to spend. But I had my final closing meeting, my final negotiating meeting with the CMO of Sears. Big meeting. We'd been working on it for 6 months. I took 4 other people from my company with me, including the president of the company, my VP of sales, the delivery person, and the client success manager. Everybody was with me. And it was a 30-minute meeting. I kid you not. We traveled 4 hours, all of us, for a 30-minute meeting. And I said, look, here's the things that I need. I need a whiteboard and whiteboard markers, and I need a projector, and obviously so that I can connect to it. So everything that could possibly go wrong in this situation went wrong. I spent more than 10 hours preparing for everything that was going on in this meeting. Every person who I took had their speaking roles, what they were allowed to say, their boundaries, or their bowling lane bumpers, if you will. They knew exactly what they could say and couldn't say. We get there, and I said, okay, my contact's name was Franklin. I said, Franklin, we ready to go? We ready to rock? He goes, well, actually, the CMO is running about 10 minutes late, but I want to take you up to the room and go ahead and get you started. I was like, oh boy, here we go. So we get to the room, and there's a whiteboard. I'm like, whew, okay. I look down. There's no whiteboard markers. I'm like, okay. I planned for this. I'm not joking. So I brought my own whiteboard markers. I'm like, you know what? Fine. Guess what? There was no projector. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. But I was prepared. I had already printed out 10 copies of the presentation that I wanted to have. It's just not what I wanted to do because I know if I hand out the presentation, they flip to the back, they jump all around, they do all the stuff I don't want them to do. So right out of the gate, the first 2 things that the only 2 things that I needed were automatically failures. So then in walks the CMO 10 minutes late, as I was told it was going to be. And I look at him, I said, Parfait, hey, so I know we were scheduled for 30 minutes. You're a little bit late here with 10 minutes. So do we still have 30 minutes or do we only have 20? He said, we've only got 20, so you better get going. So everything that could possibly rock my world has already done it. But I proceed. I was prepared. I knew exactly where we were going. We basically lay out all the negotiation lines. We give them our final proposal and our final price, and I just shut up. And sitting right next to me was the president of my company, who is not a salesperson at all. And again, we had prepared, we'd rehearsed, he knew what he was allowed to say, what he wasn't, and he just couldn't take the silence. Parvez, the CMO, he looked down at the proposal, he looked back up at me, he folded his arms, he shifted his glasses, looked back down at the proposal, flipped some pages, and there was probably, the reality is it was probably about 2 minutes worth of silence, but it seemed like an eternity. It seemed like 60 minutes. And about halfway in, my president starts to talk because he cannot stand the silence. And fortunately, I was seated right next to him. I reached under the table and I grabbed his knee and I squeezed so hard he knew that I was telling him to shut the F up. And he did. And Parvez again looks down at the document and looks back up at me and just says, "We're good. Let's do it." Signed it. And off we went. Largest deal I've ever done in my career so far. And as we were walking out, my president looks at me and goes, "How in the world did you do that?" And I said, "Nothing we said mattered." He had to internalize this himself and envision the pain of not getting this solution done and then seeing where it could go. So that's the power of silence.
I love it. Best advice you've ever received?
The best advice I've ever received, and now it's one that I continue to share with other people, specifically salespeople, but really just in general, you will never get anything in life that you don't ask for. So start asking. Let me give you an example. Let's say that you were about to go buy, one of the new 4K TVs, and you go to Best Buy and you're going to spend $1,000 on this TV. The whole intention behind what you're doing is you're going to Best Buy to buy this TV. So you get there, you see, hey, it's on sale for $900 instead of $1,000. What would it hurt to ask the sales associate at Best Buy, "Hey, I know it's on sale for $900, but I only have $700. Would you sell it to me for $700? What could happen? Well, they could tell you no, and you were already prepared to spend $1,000 on the TV, or they could say, "Yeah, I think we could do that," or we could do it for $750. And all of a sudden, you just saved more money that you would never have done if you wouldn't have had the courage just to ask. So you'll never get anything in life you don't ask for, so start asking.
I love it. What is that book? Have you read that book where the guy just traveled around and just kept asking complete strangers if he could get something or do something? I don't recall the name of the book.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a book or if it's a case study, but I've definitely read what you're talking about, and it's so true. Just by doing that in your every single day life, it teaches you the power of this concept. So I would say, yeah, the next time you go to Starbucks, ask if they'll give you the drink for free. You're there to buy it. You're going to do it anyway. So if they say yes, you just won, right? And so I want to do that as much as I can in life. So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, he was banging on people's doors and saying, "I'd like to play soccer in your backyard." It's like,
Absolutely.
Why? He wanted to be rejected. It had something to do with rejection. He wanted to get over his fear of rejection. Mm-hmm. All right. The next question. What's advice that you received that you thought it was going to be good advice, you implemented it only to find out that was really horrible advice?
So I knew this question was coming, and I don't know the answer to this. I've racked my brain on it. So I don't know where you want me to go with that.
No, that's okay. If you don't have one, that's great.
I don't think I do. Like I said, I saw this in the guest guide, and I just don't know.
All right. Next question. As entrepreneurs, it's easy to say yes to everything. We always like to see that new shiny penny, that next new thing, and we're always looking for opportunity. And as we know, there's plenty of opportunity out there. We've got to learn how to say no to things. How do you determine what to say yes to?
Well, I stole this, and I don't know who I stole it from, but I'm going to give Dharmesh Shah from HubSpot credit for it. I think I stole it from him. But he kind of came into, I think, 2000, might have been 15 or 16, with the notion of it's either hell yes or it's no. And if I can't get to hell yes on something, I have to say no. And that just eliminates a lot of that gray area. And it's harder because the older I get, and I'm only 35, and so I'm not pretending to know it all, but the older I get is seemingly the more opportunity for everything that I have, the more people that want to get on my calendar to pick my brain, the more prospects that want to talk about different ideas, the more people that want to come and say, "Hey, let's create a business partnership," like all these different things, including friends, family, wife, kids, events, all that kind of stuff. And so you have to start to balance and focus, because I know that if I try to do everything, I will end up accomplishing nothing. And I still got to feed my family, and I still got to, pay for our vacations, stuff like that. So again, I'm giving Dharmesh Shah the credit, but if the answer is not hell yes, it has to be no.
Love it. 10 years ago, what could you have done better back then? Now, obviously, you've learned a lot over the last 10 years, but what could you have done better 10 years ago?
Well, I think that 10 years ago, I've always been, I had the notion that I wanted to be an overachiever, right? Like I always wanted to do more than what people expected of me. And 10 years ago, I was 25 years old. And so I, of course, thought I knew everything at that time. But what I wish that I would have done back then is the advice I just gave you was, you will never get anything in life you don't ask for, so start asking. I wish I would have started doing that earlier, because what I found was, if you just ask, more often than not, people are going to say yes, and they'll surprise you by it, and you're going to advance your sales. You're going to advance your career. You're going to advance your personal life. So just start asking. And it's the situations that you really think that someone's going to say no, that just lean into it and ask it. Because when they say yes, you're like, oh my gosh, this could literally change the trajectory of my life. And so I wish I would have done that more 10 years ago.
Well, that is going on my calendar for this month. Ask, ask, ask. And the question to the audience today is, where in your life, where in your business are you not asking enough? Figure out what that is, put it on your calendar, make a reminder, and do it every day. At least do it for the next week, if not the next month. Jim, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. Please share with the audience how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, so one of the ways you can get a hold of me, if you like some of the personal drivel that I might have, you can get me on Twitter, and that's just Jim_Brown. You can also check out some of the podcast work or the sales coaching work I do at salestuners.com. And Thor, for your audience, we talked about the 4-step process that I have to get you from zero to whatever it is that your goal is on a daily basis. So I put together a workbook, and I want to emphasize the word work. You've got to put some work into this, but I do a lot of the calculations for you. You put in the inputs, I give you the outputs, and that's at salestuners.com/roadmap, completely free to your audience. And again, it's going to break down the steps that you have to do on a daily and weekly basis to get you to that really big number that may seem daunting.
Jim, thank you very much. I love the fact that it was just like, it was value, 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 back to back to back. So great job. Thanks for sharing with the audience, and we look forward to having you back.
Yeah, Thor, it's completely my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening today. I really do appreciate your time, and I hope you found today's show valuable. If you would like to receive these shows automatically to your phone or to your computer, simply go to iTunes and subscribe. After listening to several of the shows, if you're so inclined, please leave us a 5-star rating, as this helps us reach additional people and spread the message. If you're truly committed to taking your life to the next level and doing whatever it takes to become a peak performer, but something's holding you back, something is blocking your way, and you just can't seem to figure out what it is, send me an email to info@thorconklin.com, and I'd be more than happy to get on the phone with you. We'll schedule a 15-minute discovery call. No obligation, no cost. I absolutely love to hear from the listeners, and if there's something I can do to help, I'd be more than happy to do that. Also, if you found something of great interest in today's show and you want to share that with your friends and family, simply go to my Facebook page, Thor Conklin, click on the episode, hit the share button, and share it on your page. You can follow me at Twitter at Thor Conklin. The website is thorconklin.com. We're constantly adding new free resources, discussing additional tricks, tips, tools, and strategies on how to be a peak performer. Remember, I try to keep these episodes short so you can listen to them during dot time, doing other things, commuting, driving, walking, working out. Decide to be a peak performer in all that you do. And until tomorrow, have an absolutely amazing day.